Senator Wojtkowski has been here the longest. Besides me, I'm going to hand him the gavel. All right.
9:30, all right. I see your witnesses are assembled.
They are indeed. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is SB 358, which will revise California's Equal Pay Act. I accept the amendments represented in the mock-up that you have before you. And I could go through in great detail the fact that we have a significant gender gap in the state, women making 84 cents for every dollar a white man makes, African-American women 58 cents, and Latinas 44 cents. This wage gap, as I mentioned, just extends far and wide into almost all occupations, and the biggest gap being for our women of color. We have had in law a prohibition against gender-based discrimination since 1949, and yet we still have a significant problem. The state provisions, which are based on the Federal Equal Pay Act, are rarely utilized because many loopholes make it nearly impossible to establish a successful claim. The mock-up amendments that you have represent negotiations that we've had with the California Chamber of Commerce and the Civil Justice Association. I want to thank them. They have worked very hard. We're very close to an agreement here. I'm hoping that that happens. I think it's very likely. We've just got one small concern now. But this bill is going to help to close the wage gap in several important ways. First, the employee will no longer face retaliation by her employer for asking about the wages being paid to other employees. You can't know you're being discriminated against if you can't know what other people are making. And there is that fear of retaliation today, which makes that impossible. So second, this bill will go steps further than current federal law in its powerful combination of additional provisions ensuring that workers can challenge pay discrimination based on wages paid to other workers at different work sites of the same employer. Example, a grocery checkout clerk who works at a store in West Sacramento could challenge the higher wages being paid to the grocery checkout clerks who are of the opposite sex and working in the grocery chain's Natomas location. Why should that pay differential take place? Workers can challenge pay discrimination based on wages paid to workers doing substantially similar work. Example, a female housekeeper who provides room cleaning services at a hotel could challenge the higher wages being paid to the male janitor who cleans the lobby and the banquet halls. This is the kind of discrimination that we are confronting. Employers would be required to show that a difference in wages is based on a specific factor that is legitimate, serves a business purpose, and is not based or derived from a gender bias. In other words, it's got to be a gender-blind distinction. So we have, as I said, moved forward. We are working with the Chamber. This is a bill that is just going to bring us to parity, finally, once and for all, while allowing differentials that are not gender-based. And there are some of those. It's employment, experience, potentially work history, education. These are legitimate concerns, but we need to make sure that when we're paying people, they are being paid on a gender-blind basis. And I have here as a witness a wonderful woman who testified for us last week, demonstrating there's absolutely no reasonable basis for being paid less. So with that, Aileen Rizo, who will give us a firsthand account of continued wage discrimination. And then we also have Marissa Diaz with Equal Rights Advocates who are helping with this bill. And we've been working on this for a mere 35 years. It's about time.
Good evening, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to share my story. My name is Aileen Rizo, and I'm the mother of 3 daughters and the sole breadwinner of my household. I've worked in math education for approximately 19 years, and I have 2 master's degrees, one in educational technology and one in math education. My professional title is math consultant, and I work for the Fresno County Office of Education, which is under the leadership of Superintendent Jim Yavino. In July 2012, after about 3 years with the county office, I was in my 4th year. One of my colleagues who has just signed his first contract shared how he was signed at a salary step that would grant him thousands more than I was making and nearly 20,000 more than I was given on my first contract. This made no sense for 3 important reasons. I had more experience, more education, and more seniority. As the other males shared their salaries, it quickly became apparent that as the only full-time female in the math department, I was the only one who, when hired, was placed at the lowest point of the salary scale. I was humiliated, embarrassed, and ashamed. The next week, I met with the HR administrator. She explained that the institution solely used prior pay to base my salary. I tried to explain how such a policy allowed for discrimination and only perpetuated the wage gap. I wish I could tell you that after that conversation, everything was set right and the policy was revised, but that is far from the journey that I have taken since then. After a month of waiting for a reply, I received a letter that in essence said, "We know you feel slighted, but we're standing by our policy." I appealed to higher administration and even Jim Jovino as a newly elected superintendent, but all of it came to nothing. With all my internal efforts exhausted, I felt defeated. When I decided to get a lawyer, I had no idea how long it would take or how much we would invest both emotionally and financially. It took 6 months alone to obtain the right to sue from the Department of Justice. And if we win summary judgment, the protected trial date is not until January 2016. My parents sacrificed so that I could be the first to go to college. I paid the same tuition as the males around me, yet statistics show that right out of college, women are earning less. Many would say that we do not need more laws, but I am grateful for laws like the Equal Pay Act, without which I would never have had the opportunity to fight this discrimination that I'm experiencing. No one would prefer the path of a lawsuit and the drain that it takes to stand up to institutions that have deeper pockets and that have no urgency to resolve the issue for which they have no emotional tie. Many women like me work years without knowing that the man they sit next to is taking more money home to his family, and my family is worth just the same as his. My story is not over. Every day I go to work and I expose myself to the twist of the discrimination knife, praise for work well done, requests for work that I am more highly skilled to do, and even praise for the work that I've done statewide is all tainted because my employer continually decides to pay me less than my male counterparts, and I can never make up for those wages that I have lost or for the retirement that I have lost.
Thank you. Next witness.
Hello, good evening. My name is Marisa Diaz. I work at Equal Rights Advocates, one of the organizational co-sponsors of this bill. ERA, over its more than 40-year history, has represented women, hundreds of women seeking fair pay in a wide variety of industries. We know that women's earnings are even more essential to families, their communities, and the economy of California now than ever before, as they are increasingly the sole breadwinners and also co-breadwinners in their households. As Senator Jackson already stated, the wage gap affects women in every industry, across every occupation, education level, income level. And I'm going to focus just on a couple ways that we think this bill is really important. The first is that it addresses a part of the gender wage gap that comes from situations like Aileen's, where women are not paid the same, paid equally to men for doing substantially similar work or work of comparable character to men's. The second contributing factor to the gender wage gap that SB 358 will address is a widespread lack of information and culture of secrecy about pay that prevents workers from unearthing unjustifiable pay disparities. SB 358 strengthens California's existing Equal Pay Act in several respects. First, it eliminates the outdated same establishment requirement. It clarifies the factors on which employers may rely to pay employees differently for doing the same work, and requires employers to provide more specific business justification for any factor relied upon. And it also requires employers to demonstrate that the justification accounts for the entire pay differential. It provides greater protection for workers who want to ask or talk about their pay or the pay of other employees in order to enforce their rights to equal pay. Just to give a couple examples, the way the Equal Pay Act is currently written has led to absurd results, such as with the same establishment requirement with a woman who was working in San Francisco who compared her salary to a man in the same position in the Fresno office, as she was being paid less than him, and her claim was dismissed in part because he was not at the same establishment as her. So this would allow that type of comparison. Also, ERA has represented women who have, as Aileen has noted, found out, 3 to 4 years into their career that they're not making as much as their male counterparts, and want to be able to discuss this with their coworkers, who also, the men, also think that's unjustified, and they need to know that they are protected from retaliation, and they have that right to discuss that. So SB 358 offers adjustments and updates to California's law that will make it clearer, stronger, and more effective. Given the persistent gender wage gap that is hurting women and families in this state, the time for making these changes is now. Thank you so much, and we urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Others in support of SB 358?
Thank you, Senators. Mariko Yoshihara with the California Employment Lawyers Association. Want to thank Senator Jackson again for her strong leadership on this issue, and Aileen for telling her story. These changes are long overdue, and so we strongly urge your support on this bill. Thank you.
Shannon Smith Crowley, representing the American Association of University Women for California, and we actually had the wage report, or the college report from 2012 that showed even a year out of college in the same career, there was still a wage gap.
I was thinking, as we're listening, that the Assembly rules looks at your past employment when determining what wage that you're going to receive when you get hired as a staff person here. And since this bill applies both to private employers and public employers, creates some interesting discussions that we may have.
We have raised that issue.
We may have. Questions of the senator by members of the committee? Seeing none, there's a motion. Would you like to close?
Very briefly, I sit here in equal standing with my colleagues and the people who are working so hard so that we can get equal rights. Finally, we will lead the country in this. I want to thank the folks from the business community. I think they recognize as well that in today's day and age, equal pay for work of what we are calling comparable, what do we call substantially similar work, it's time. It's long overdue, and I'm excited that we're continuing to work together to make it happen. I ask for your aye vote.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due.
Yeah.
The motion is due. Passes amended to Senate Appropriations Committee. Jackson.
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Morlock. Anderson. Anderson, no. Hertzberg.
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye. Leno. Leno, aye. Wanning. Monning, aye. Wykowski.
Aye.
Wykowski, aye.
Let's turn our attention to the issue of privacy. That's 5-1. The measure is approved. We have, in the breach of that, we have SB 570,